Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Fernando?
Welcome to the show.
After a little bit of fun, I managed to get all the wiring out of the car. The wire came in and they taped it underneath here, and yeah, you get the idea. It wasn't anything special. I finally found the connector for the Pioneer camera. This guy. It was taped somewhere in this area here, which is terrible because you need to be able to remove this if something were to happen. That's where this area comes into play. This connection will now be located in here. If they need to remove all this, they can do it through this by pulling the light and unplugging both the third brake light and the backup camera. I have to cut these zip ties. We'll get that positioned straight and on. We'll put the tire back on. Because the camera was mounted like this, that means the camera is going to be upside down. You do need to remove the two Allen heads and flip the camera around. Let's head over to the bench and we'll also prep the wire while we're there and get it ready to go back into the car. When dealing with one of these cube style cameras like this, if you'll notice there's this little gray dot. All of them have some form of a dot like that I've seen, and that indicates which side is up. First thing I like to do is wrap the whole wire with 2 layers of exterior tessa tape. In case you didn't know, there's 2 different types of tessa tape. There's a fuzzy fleece kind, which is supposed to be for interior and it gets sticky as all hell. And then there's the, I don't know, kind that won't rip is the easiest way to describe it. If you can rip it, it's not the exterior. This stuff takes a higher temperature and doesn't get as sticky as quick. What I like to do is wrap one full wrap in one direction and then come back and wrap it in the opposite direction. That's one wrap done. Go the other direction. That brings this wire up to a thickness almost like a 10 gauge. We have our 2 layers on this. Now we're gonna move to the power wire for the third brake light. Repeat the process because we definitely don't want these guys to get messed up. Now put on some flex loom. I've added about 2 feet of flex loom to just the camera wire here, not the whole thing, just this tip that is gonna go on the back. In the end, I've put on some more of the exterior tape to hold this in place. I'm gonna put some shrink wrap over that to hold all this in place. The third brake light is going to link in right where that came apart. We're back at the back of the car. It's time to get this guy mounted in place. I always like to leave a little C-bend here just so there is some extra on this if it ever needs to come off or whatever and move around, or they decide they want to move this tire up and down. It's not super tight like it was when we took it off. I'm going to zip tie the third brake light wire and this into place. Leave a little extra wire for the third brake light because that is also movable. This can be slidden up and down. There is also a bunch of holes in here that I'm going to use to zip tie this into place so the wires just aren't bouncing around. When cutting zip ties, pick yourself up a pair of flush cutters. They're flat on one side and they will cut these nice and flush so you don't cut yourself if you're ever running your hand over them. Tape up over this little 6-inch piece of exposed wiring here. Because this plug is outside, even though this is supposed to be a waterproof connection, it doesn't look like it's doing that good a job. I'm gonna add some dielectric grease to it. That way it'll have years of life left in it. We're going to add our bigger piece of flex loom over this for the 2 wires. Because there's 2 wires here and they do need to move a little bit, I've gone to our bigger flex loom so it's not so restrictive on those wires. I could have used the same loom that we used up here on the camera, but I want these to have some give. And lastly, we'll finish off the overlapping seam with a piece of shrink wrap. We'll get our wire run over here into the car. The hole they had located in the light fixture down there was, they used like 2 drill bits. It was, I don't know, or beaver. So we've made the hole bigger. It is in a plastic panel. I'll show you 2 once we're done there. But I want to make it so that they can unplug both these and the camera. To do that, I'm using this little guy here. It's an XT30. It's just a small connector that will fit back through the hole that I drilled. Solders into place. There's a positive end and a negative end. I'm covering it with some gray heat shrink so that it makes it easy to see in this dark hole here. I'll add the other end to the factory side. With those two ends soldered up, we can now plug them together and then pull the wire back down through the hole, because we had pulled it up extra high so that we would have enough wire to solder in here. Our Pioneer cable is going to come into this guy also, but we're going to have this extra loop. I'm going to loop up the wire, loop it up, not tie it into a bundle. This way, once we get our Pioneer wire ran in through this grommet, we can plug it in and then put this all back together. Lastly, what we need to do is waterproof the hole that is in the bottom of the car, because it was waterproofed before. They didn't waterproof it, don't get me wrong. They had no idea what they were doing. We're going to. And we've added in our strip caulk on both sides. The nice thing about strip caulk is it's a butyl that never dries. It'll move, it'll flex, the wire can wiggle and it won't break. The bonding, it'll just get gooier, really. So it's really good for this kind of waterproofing. Check the movement of our wire. Make sure that it doesn't get bunched up or pinched. This is what we were hoping for, as opposed to before where it got caught up and draped down into the door. Before I run this wire, I want to get this tire back on and get this all bolted into place, because this is still loose and I don't want to get it knocked off and broken. And that's what it's supposed to look like. Checking out the back side of the door, the wires are all zip tied in place. They come along the bottom here. Last zip tie is there, and then it'll snake into there. This is why we put so much tape over the wire though, so that as this rubs, even if it rubs through this, there's still 2 layers of tape that are in the way, and hopefully if they saw where it rubbed through this, they'd bring it back and have this replaced. But you never know. Better to be safe now and just plan for the worst. Let's head over to the bench and prep the other part of the wiring harness. For the wire running through the car, we're gonna be using split loom because it's not exposed to the outside. We'll start at this end here. What I like to do is get a couple inches onto the wire like this, slide it back about 1 inch, roll 2 or 3 wraps of tape over it, then slide the split loom back in place, putting the slit through the roll of tape, bringing it about halfway into that roll of tape, and then rolling the tape back over it. Go up about 4 or 5 inches with the tape. And I'll keep that end nice and secure onto the split loom. I just have to run the rest of this wire and cover it in split loom. I need to get it up through this hole here in the top and down into the 3rd brake light. Just in case some water gets in here, I'm gonna put some more dielectric grease on both of our connections. Plug the factory light back into place. Add the 2 screws that hold it in, and we're done in this portion of the car. Pulling back the carpet, you can see where we've zip tied it into the factory wiring harness. In a Jeep, this back piece is carpet, then as it goes forward, it becomes plastic. The front panel is off and the wire is zip tied into place. You wanna make sure when running into the kick panel, you follow the main wiring harness all the way forward. Don't turn here before then. The allure is to just go straight up, like right through here. Don't do that, because the way the panel sits, it has this edge on it right here, and this spot here in the end is where that wire comes up. This won't sit flat. This is made to sit flat against the side of that car. Just like that. Fernando got the trim bezel attached while I was putting in the backup camera. As you can see, it fits so nice. Look how flush that is. Look how sharp these lines are. It's high gloss too, and it's nice and metal. I can hold it out here by just these 2 tabs, and it doesn't do anything. It's so strong and sturdy. For those of you that have never seen it before, this is a short chassis radio. Normally there'd be more to the radio, but since there's no DVD, CD player in here, they've taken that space out, conserved on a little bit of metal, which went into these. Yay. This is what we end up with. With the wire up into the dash, run properly, Before you snap the bezel back on of any of your installations, do some quick checks. First off, make sure the radio turns on and plays sound. It's crucial. Secondly, if it's got Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, plug into your USB device and make sure it works. That's why we always ask for weather. It will talk and give us the weather. That way we know the microphone is working and also the sound is playing out of the right speakers. If we see the lines and we don't hear the sound, in this case, we'll know that we have the amplified system and we forgot to check. That never happens. Next, of course, is the backup camera. And we have a backup camera. Once you've tested everything that you can think of to possibly test, then put the bezel back on. The only time there's an exception for that is if there's an airbag light attached to that bezel. What we'll do is we'll remove that light out of the bezel, plug it in, do our testing, unplug it, screw it back into the proper housing, and then snap it all back together. There's only like 1 or 2 cars you can't do that on. Volvo. Let's get it put back on and we'll show you what this dash kit looks like. If you look at the dash kit, you'll notice it has really nice corner gapping. You don't get that bending that you typically get in a Jeep kit. It's nice and straight on both sides. And that's why it's my favorite Chrysler dash kit. All right, guys, that brings this PSA, as it were, to a close.
Yep.
Fernando.
Thank you for watching. On to the next one.
You guys have a wonderful day as always. We'll catch you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.